doing good. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Malin, and today I'm bringing you another 3-course vegan meal in hopes to inspire some yummy homemade dinners for Valentine's this year. All the recipes are for 2 servings, but this doesn't mean that you have to be 2 people at the dinner table. You can definitely cook this meal for yourself and you'll have leftovers, which is never a bad thing, right? And the meal is going to start with a sort of bruschetta with some tapenade on top. Then we're moving on to a parsnip and white bean puree with some really yummy mushroom steaks. And for dessert, I'm making some orange chocolate pots. I made chocolate pots on the channel before, but this one is a little bit different and it's super decadent and rich, which I think is nice for this meal. I've done 3-course menus like this before on the channel, so I'll link them in the description box if you want to check them out for more ideas. Before we start, I also want to thank Nordgreen for sponsoring this video. Nordgreen is a Danish watch brand that cares about people and the environment, and their pieces are really classic and timeless, and they offer many different straps that are easily interchangeable, which means that the piece is really versatile. You can use it again and again and match it to many different outfits. Nordgreen's sustainability focus shows through them choosing sustainable packaging and carbon neutral shipping methods. They also have a giving back program in which they work with NGOs on different social and environmental programs, and they also ensure ethical practices in all of their factories. When it comes to the watch I'm wearing, I've chosen their 36mm Philosopher, and I've got it with a golden mesh strap, and I also have a brown vegan leather strap. And I must say that I think it's really awesome that they offer so many different vegan options for the straps. The Philosopher is a 2-piece style with a combined asymmetric second hand, which makes it a unique design. It's got a robust yet classy look, and I think it would suit pretty much anyone. I think a Nordgreen watch would make a really lovely Valentine's gift for a friend, a loved one, or for yourself. And if you use the code and link in the description box, you get 15% off your order. And this code also works on sale items. But now let's get back into cooking the Valentine's menu. So for the starter, I'm making a bruschetta, which is a traditional Italian dish. Most of us know it as grilled little pieces of bread with like chopped tomato on top and usually some basil and garlic. I'm switching it up a little bit. I'm still doing the grilled bread, but I'm doing some green olive tapenade on top and then topping it with some tomatoes and basil. But we're gonna start by grilling the bread. So what I do first is I slice up a baguette, and I'm using 4 pieces so that we get 2 pieces each. And then I'm brushing the bread with some olive oil and rubbing it with some fresh garlic. To make it really crispy and delicious, I'm toasting it in the oven at 225 degrees Celsius for about 5 minutes, but keep an eye on it not to burn. While the bread is toasting, I'm going to prepare the tapenade, and I'm using a Greek green olive called halkidiki, but you could use any type of green olive that you like the taste of. It's good to use one that's a little bit meaty in texture. And I'm putting my olives into the bowl of a food processor, and then I'm also adding in some capers. For a little bit of herby freshness, I'm adding in some fresh flat leaf parsley that I'm just tearing into little pieces. Then I drizzle in some extra virgin olive oil, I zest a whole lemon into the bowl as well, and I squeeze in the juice. To combine it all into a tapenade, I pulse the machine to get it to a good consistency, and this is a little bit individual. I like mine a little bit chunky. To serve, I'm gonna spread the tapenade over the bread and then add some fresh colorful tomatoes on top of that and finish off with a little bit of basil. If you wanted to, you could drizzle a little bit of olive oil over the top, but I think it's fine just like this. My main course has 4 elements to it. It's got a white bean and parsnip puree that goes with some really yummy, savory portobello mushroom steaks. To go with this, I'm making a jus, which is like a sauce that I make from whatever's in the pan after I fried the mushrooms, and some lemon, which really brightens everything. And then it also has a dusting of dukkha. And dukkha is a Middle Eastern sort of spice and seed nut mix. I don't know how to explain it better than that, but it's really nutty, fragrant, savory, and it goes really well with this dish. And I actually lied because the main actually has 5 components, because I'm also making a fennel salad to go along with all of this, because otherwise the dish is a little brown and I think we need a little bit of a pop of green and some freshness to go along with it. I'm going to start by preparing the dukkha, and to do this I'm toasting some walnuts in a dry pan just for a couple of minutes until it's fragrant and gets a little bit golden. Then I remove that from the pan and set it aside while I toast some spices and sesame seeds. So next into the pan I'm adding some coriander seed and some cumin seed. I've also got some sesame seeds, and I'm adding in some fennel seeds. And I'm gonna toast all of this for a couple of minutes, maybe 3, until it's also really fragrant and does a lot of popping sounds and movements. Then I take that off the heat as well, and I combine the nuts with the seeds in my food processor. I add some flaky sea salt and I pulse it all until it becomes a little bit of a chunky dust that I can sprinkle over my dish. I transfer it into a bowl and I set it aside while I prepare the other elements. Before I get started with the mushrooms, I want to prep the salad because it's easier to do that first and then just leave it in the fridge. So what I do is that I slice up half a fennel bulb really finely and I pop that into a bowl. I grab a handful of fresh flat leaf parsley and I pop that into the bowl as well, and then I go for some fresh dill and some fresh basil. I combine it all in the bowl and I add some more fresh lemon zest into there. I also squeeze some lemon over it all and I season it with a pinch of salt before tossing it all together. Like I said, I keep this in the fridge until I'm ready to serve. Next up, we'll prepare the mushrooms, and I wanted to say that I am using portobello mushrooms, but you could also use clusters of oyster mushrooms to do this. It's the same technique and it looks really pretty like that, but I could only find portobello mushrooms and they are really yummy and look beautiful as well. And what I do is that I cook them in a pan over quite a long time and I press them to get like a more chewy, firm texture. And I also season it with some chicken seasoning, and I'll write down below what sort of goes in that type of seasoning, but I just bought it from the store. You could also use steak seasoning for this. Just look for something that you would normally season meats with, because that's sort of what we're trying to emulate here. And I also want to say that the cooking time might vary a little bit depending on your mushrooms. The more water they have, the more time it will take to cook, because we're gonna let it all evaporate, and this is sort of what leaves us with this more chewy texture. But let's get started. First of all, I heat my skillet to medium heat, and then I add some rapeseed oil. You want an oil that can handle some heat, and you need quite a bit of it because the mushroom sucks it up. Then I cut a little bit of the stem of the mushroom if it doesn't look exactly fresh, and finally I place it into the frying pan. I fry it like this for a couple of minutes until I can hear a strong sizzling noise. Then I place another skillet on top to weigh it all down. First, I let the weight of the skillet do most of the work, and I actually use the weight of the skillet most throughout the cooking process, but at times I also press down with my hand. When I use my hand, I often use a cloth to protect my hand because the second skillet on top also gets warm, so be careful. You will find that a lot of liquid releases in this first cooking process, or you might flip them and then the water releases. It doesn't really matter which way it goes, but before I flip my mushrooms, I score the top of them in a crisscross pattern. This allows more flavor to get into those little crevices, and it helps it release moisture as well. Once I've flipped the mushrooms, I weigh it down with the skillet again, and I press a little bit on top of it to make sure that it gets a good surface for cooking. When you find that the mushroom releases its liquid, you're just going to allow all of that liquid to cook off before you touch the pan again. Because while the liquid is in there, it's not going to get any caramelization or like nice cooking surface, so just let all the water evaporate and then cook it until it's golden. When the top is golden, season the bottom side, the side now facing up, with the chicken seasoning, and then flip the mushrooms over. Again, weigh it down with the skillet for a couple of minutes until that's all nicely cooked under there. Then season the top with the chicken seasoning again and flip them over one more time. Weigh them down one more time and cook until they have a nice cooking surface with some color. At this point, I transfer the mushrooms into an oven-proof dish and I set them in the oven on a low heat just to keep them warm. Before I remove the frying pan off the heat, I'm going to prepare the jus, and to do this I put 1 cup of water into the pan and I use a whisk to get all of that flavor that's at the bottom of the pan into the water. Then, because I'm using a carbon steel pan, or if you were using a cast iron pan you would do the same, I transfer the liquid into a small saucepan because I don't want too much water cooking for a long time in the frying pan. To thicken the jus, I am combining some cornstarch with a little bit of water and stirring it until there are no lumps. Then I add it into the pot while I whisk vigorously. I bring it all to a boil and then I turn it down to a simmer for a couple of minutes just to thicken. While it's simmering, I'm crumbling in half of a stock cube, and I'm using a mushroom-based one, and I make sure to whisk that into the jus to make sure there are no lumps. After a couple of minutes, the jus has a nice consistency, so I take it off the heat and then I add some lemon zest. Lots of lemon zest going on, but it's super nice with this dish, I promise. And I also squeeze in a little bit of lemon juice to finish off the jus, and I set it aside while I make my white bean and parsnip puree. And this has a super luscious texture and a really nice sweetness from the parsnip and some earthiness as well, of course. So what I do first is that I peel and chop my parsnips and I steam them. This will of course soften them and allow us to blend them into a puree later. You could also boil them if you don't have a steamer basket. While the parsnips are steaming, I get my food processor out again and I add some drained and rinsed white beans into it. I also pour in some soy milk, but you could use any type of plant milk. I drizzle in some olive oil. I add a little bit of lemon juice. I also season it with some garlic powder and some onion powder just to give it a little bit of depth and roundness. And I season it with salt and black pepper. Once the parsnip has softened, this should take about 10 minutes. I remove my steamer basket from the pot and I add the parsnip into the food processor with the other ingredients. Then I blend on auto until it becomes really nice and smooth. Now we're finally ready to serve, and I do this on flat plates, and I start by adding the puree onto the plate. I like to swirl it out a little bit with a spatula or a spoon. Then I sprinkle over some of our dukkha, which adds a nice crunch and lots of flavor. And if you want, you can drizzle some olive oil over this as well. Then I get my mushrooms from the oven, I slice them in half, and I place 3 halves on each plate. And I finish off with an extra sprinkling of the dukkha. I serve the jus in a jug on the side because I think it looks more beautiful without it on top from the beginning, but you of course pour that over when you're ready to eat to complete the dish. It's time to prepare the dessert, and normally I would do this first actually. So before I do any of the other elements for this meal, I would prepare the dessert because you can keep it in the fridge, and actually you should keep it in the fridge for at least 1 hour before you serve it. You could actually do the same for the tapenade, for the starter as well. That you could even make the day before. And actually you can make this dessert the day before as well. It's a really simple dessert, but so yummy and decadent and rich, and the main ingredient is actually silken tofu, which I'm I'm sure will surprise many of you, but trust me, you don't have any like tofu taste in there, and actually tofu doesn't have much of a strong taste anyway. You really just taste chocolate and orange, which is what this dessert is all about. So first of all, we're going to pop our silken tofu into the food processor. I'm also drizzling in some maple syrup, and then I zest a little bit of orange zest into the blender bowl. And I squeeze in some orange juice too. I sprinkle in a tiny pinch of salt just to bring all the flavors out, and then I blend this until it's more or less smooth. To bring in the chocolatey element into this dish, I'm going to melt some dark chocolate in a bain-marie. So I place a bowl over a pot of boiling water and I break my chocolate into that bowl. This allows the chocolate to melt evenly. But you could totally also do this in the microwave if you prefer. I use a spatula to move the chocolate around as it melts, and once it's melted, I pour it in an even stream into the food processor with the other ingredients while it's blending on auto. This allows the dessert to emulsify and come together, but I also remove the lid of the food processor and scrape down the edges once or twice just to make sure that everything's combined. Once it's all blended smooth, you can pour it into little jars and place it in the fridge to chill. Like I said, for about an hour, or you could do it for even longer. When it's time to serve, I like to chop up some pistachios and sprinkle them over the top. I also like to add some pomegranate kernels. They both add a really beautiful texture and color and flavor that just complements the orange chocolate pots perfectly. I would also serve little bowls of this topping on the side because it's nice to add more as you eat. So this concludes my 3-course vegan menu for Valentine's Day 2021, but of course you could do this any other day you want to. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you will try some of the recipes, if not all of them, at least one, and I'll leave a link to the full recipes in the description box as usual if you want to refer to a written recipe. I look forward to seeing you in the next one, and an early happy Valentine's Day to you all. Take care. Bye!